Chicago kind of pushed their chips to the table, went and got DeMar DeRozan. They had Zach LaVine, signed Lonzo Ball, and that was the belief that that would be the missing piece, the cog that would kind of put everything together. And in the short stint that he had for the Bulls before the injury and missing this upcoming season, last season, and then the majority of the season before that, it was very promising. It was like, okay, like he looked great. He improved his 3-point shot, one of the better defensive guards in the league, a guy that can really kind of keep the ISO heavy Bulls kind of more free flowing, right? Push the pace, make some nice plays, some highlight passes, things like that, play off the ball if need be. You got DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, both can be just, lights out scorers, really just put the ball in the hoop. They go and they trade for Nikola Vucevic, and it's like, all right, they got a legit 2010 center, right? You got Williams, who's like this nice young 3-and-D style forward, and it's like, okay, right? They're putting this team together. They go Alex Caruso. You're like, all right, they got the defensive guard. They got two just elite level scorers. They got a 2010 center, and they got the point guard to put it all together. And it just hasn't worked out, right? And no one's ever going to blame Chicago for trying to make that push, right? They pushed their chips to the table on a hand that at the time looked like a great hand, a winning hand. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way, right? Sometimes that's the way it goes, right? And yet, it just seems like Chicago is stuck in this, mediocre level, right? Like they're not good enough to really be a contender or make some noise or do anything. They're kind of like this play-in team, and they just continue to not put it all together. Even if Lonzo was here, I still don't think that they would be a contender. Would they be better? I do believe that, just because Lonzo, again, he would be the kind of engine that gets the car going, right? Instead of a lot of like ISO heavy LaVine and DeRozan, it would be, I think, a little more free-flowing offensively. The pace would be faster. I think that the defense would be a little better, right? Because he's a guy that could play both sides of the ball. He shot like 43% for them. Again, short stint, but still, it was very promising. And Chicago just feels like a team that needed to kind of tear it down last year. It was something that I really believe that they should have done. There were reports that were coming out that the Knicks are willing to offer a Godfather package, as it was put, for Zach LaVine. They missed out on Donovan Mitchell, and they kind of felt like slighted by that, and it was like, whoa, let's pivot elsewhere, let's go look elsewhere. And I think that would have been a perfect opportunity for Chicago to trade Zach LaVine. I think that they could have really gotten a much better deal and package than they would have gotten otherwise. But even recently, there have been reports about Zach LaVine potentially getting traded, and that Chicago has kind of fielded offers for him. Not necessarily to trade him, but just kind of see like gauge the interest and gauge what the type of return would be for Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan, I think that they should have traded him to the Lakers last year. The Lakers were at a point of just utter desperation, right? And this is coming from a Laker fan, right? This is coming from a guy that, eats, sleeps, breathes Lakers, has the Laker channel. If you're familiar with me and my content, you know all about As It Stands Lakers. And we were, right? Lakers were in a very dire situation, started 2-10. They probably would have given you whatever you wanted, especially after missing out on Kyrie and stuff like that. Yeah, you probably would have had to take on Russell Westbrook, but you would have gotten probably 2 first-round picks. You probably could have gotten like a Max Christie, maybe even have gotten an Austin Reeves, because this was before the Austin Reeves emergence, right? Like this would have been early on, before when Austin Reeves was like, oh, he's a solid player that may end up being something, and now he's kind of had this emergence. I really think that you could have gotten DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers and just kind of got a fleece level deal or something pretty close, right? And I think it is something that the Lakers would have pulled the trigger on. And now it's like, who's really giving you a solid haul in return for DeRozan? Right? Like, you can make an argument DeRozan doesn't make any sense for the Lakers anymore with the roster that they currently have. I mean, I wouldn't mind DeRozan on the Lakers, right? Like, if you could trade D'Lo for DeRozan, especially if they're planning on having Austin Reeves play the point guard more, I wouldn't really be against that. But but it's not something that is out of desperation anymore, right? The Lakers are in a great shape, great position. They look like a team that very well might be one of, if not the best teams in the entire league this year. And then you look at a team like the Knicks, and yes, there's still an argument for Zach LaVine, but I think the Knicks were even better than they had expected. And Jalen Brunson really stepped up. And, they got a RJ Barrett who is just going to continue to get better and continue to improve. And they got some nice young pieces and like Grimes and Sims and, Quickly and things like that. So it's like you look at the Knicks and it's like, okay, well, are they in that, are they caught up in their feelings and emotions like they were after the Donovan Mitchell just failure to trade, right? Situations change, especially in the NBA, as quickly as they do. And it's something that I just feel is past due. And I think it's inevitable that they're going to end up having to trade these guys this season because I don't think Chicago is going to all of a sudden be a really good team. And I do think teams are only going to get better in the Eastern Conference. And this kind of feels like the last two Raw. And I'm not the only person that believes this. The Chicago Bulls center, Vu, he reiterated this very thing in an interview. He stated, speaking to Yahoo Sports' Jake Fisher, Vu admitted that this could be the last chance for the current core group of Bulls players. We know we can do better, and we have to do better. And we know it's kind of our last chance as a core of guys to do something. So I agree, right? I think if they're a play-in team again come the trade deadline, or they're 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in that ballpark, and they're struggling and things aren't working, I think that they're going to just, tear it down. Now, I do understand the argument for, they didn't have their pick and stuff like that last year. They couldn't really tank. And it really didn't make a ton of sense to tank. But it's more of you wouldn't have gotten that great pick, but I think you would have gotten a bigger haul than you would have this year, right? Because again, who's lining up to go and give you a bunch of assets for DeMar DeRozan? I like DeMar DeRozan. I think DeMar DeRozan is still a great player. He's been one of the most clutch players in the entire league the last 3 years. And he's a guy that I do think could make an impact on the right team in the right situation as your second or third scorer, right? If you're looking for him to just kind of be the guy to just go get you buckets, I think he makes a world of sense. But he's 34 years old. He has been Mr. Iron Man, though. This is a guy that does play basketball and does stay on the basketball court. So that could be something that could incentivize some of these teams, right? He played 74 games last year, 76 games the year before. With San Antonio before the Chicago trade, he played 61 games, but 68, 77, 80, 70. I mean, he basically is averaging about 74 games per year. So this is a guy that even at his age still can stay on the basketball court. But how many teams are looking at it and going, man, you know what the missing piece is? DeMar DeRozan, right? I don't know how many teams. I think Milwaukee could make a little sense for him. Miami, right? If they don't end up getting Damian Lillard, I think DeMar DeRozan kind of fits a lot of those needs. But what are you going to get really from Miami? Maybe some draft picks, but how valuable will those be? We'll see. It's a tough spot where it's just you look at last year and it's you from a tanking standpoint for your own draft pick, I guess it didn't make a world of sense, but the return that you could have gotten, I think would have been better. There was countless reports of Zach LaVine getting, heavy offers from the Knicks. And I'm sure that there are other teams that would be more than happy to go trade for Zach LaVine, right? And then, Vu, before you went and signed him to this long-term deal, I actually think that you might have been able to, even as an expiring contract, I think he would have had some value. But I do think as a 2010 center, he's a guy that could have had some value for some teams last year, right? And, Alex Caruso, I think, is a guy that many teams would love to have, right? I think many teams would sign up to go and acquire him. Even Andre Drummond, I think, could get you some level of return, right? But now it's you re-sign Vu to a 3 years, 60 million or something like that. So he's locked up through 2025, 2026, which isn't a bad value for him. He's still 32. I'm not saying that it's not something that like is unmovable, right? They didn't sign him to like a 40 million a year deal or something like that. 18 million a year average is good, right? Especially for the type of center that he is and what he can provide. But like, who's lining up to trade for him? Again, I think that he has some value. I think he could make some sense for some teams. But, what type of return are you really going to get for him? Where last year there was a couple, like there were teams that were just unloading. You had the tank raise. You had all kinds of just things that kind of made sense where teams might have given you a little something just to even just get the expiring contract. And it's just, I don't know, I feel like the Bulls are a year too late. And there are reports that Chicago is even interested in re-signing DeMar DeRozan and hopes that he stays here long term. I mean, how long term he's 35. Like, how long, or 34, right? He's going to be 35. Like, how long term do you want him? And again, like, why are you so okay with being mediocre? Right? Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense. Now, could that have just been showing face, right? Like, what are you supposed to say? Like, nah, like, we want DeMar out of here, right? Like, we can't wait to trade him, right? Like, no, you're not going to say anything like that. So I do understand to a degree there is that level of, just showing face. But, it could have been, there's other ways to phrase that, rather than just like, yeah, like, we're looking to re-sign him for a 3-year deal. Like, you could have been like, hey, it's up to DeMar DeRozan, kind of deflected it, like indirectly answer it type thing. But I don't know. I just think Chicago I don't see them going anywhere, right? And like, let's say they do turn it around and they are like the 5th seed. I don't think they're going to be a top 2 or 3 team in the league, right? I mean, maybe if like Philly just completely implodes, right? Like maybe if Chicago just completely, because they do have talent. Like they do have a very talented roster, right? Like, so this is a roster that I do look at and go, all right, like they if they could figure it out, like they could be pretty solid. But I don't think they're better than Milwaukee. I don't think they're better than Boston. I don't think they're better than the Knicks or the Cavs, right? Like, could they shock one of those 2 teams? Sure. I wouldn't be that shocked. Like, I wouldn't be like, no way they just eliminated the Knicks. Like, no way they just eliminated the Cavs. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised. If Philly buys in and James Harden, actually plays and he doesn't try to like sabotage the season, then I don't think they're better than Philly. So I think that they're, like at best the 6th best team in the league or in the Eastern Conference. Like, that's not great, right? It's just, I don't know. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. How do you feel? What do you think? What do you think Chicago should do? Should they have tore it down last year? Should they tear it down this year? Should they just kind of, like let DeMar go and let that salary fall off the books and, try to trade LaVine? Like, what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear it. Let me know.